So I talk a lot on this channel about what's the best bank. There are a number of reasons you might want to choose a bank. It could be for a bank switching bonus or monthly reward. It could be because you need an overdraft, or maybe you just want one with a branch around the corner from you. But most of the time, those things you can get from additional banks. If you're looking for the best bank for your everyday banking, I think the most important thing nowadays is how good is the app. Can you do everything on the app? You don't need to go online. You don't need to go on the phone. You don't need to go into a branch if there even is a branch. You can do it all there. And if you're a regular watch these videos, you'll know that the two that I generally recommend are Monzo and Starling. And I did a video a few years ago comparing them with also Revolut and Monese. And these were the best two, obviously. And they still are better than Revolut and Monese in my opinion. But we've now got this fella on the block as well. We've now got Chase, which does a lot of the same things. So how do you choose between Monzo and Starling and now Chase? So if you haven't got any of these banks right now and you're thinking about getting one, or maybe you've already got one of these two and you're wondering whether you should ditch them for Chase, this is the video for you. I'm going to take you through some of the key features you get with these banks, compare them. I won't necessarily go into all the detail, otherwise we'll be here for hours, but I'll show you a table which will also be available in a companion blog post over on becleveryourcash.com. So if you want more detail after watching this, you can go over there and look at those tables in more detail so you can see exactly what the different things are for each of the apps. What I should say is that these ones, there are some givens with these, which I won't necessarily go into a lot of detail here. The ability to kind of see your bank details, to copy them, share them, all that kind of stuff that they are given with these ones. These are good apps, There are a couple ones which aren't too bad from the other banks. Recently looking at the Halifax one, that's pretty good. The Barclays one isn't too bad either. But these are the three for us to focus on. So let's jump into it first, shall we? And let me get my spreadsheet, my massive spreadsheet that took me like more than a day to compile all the research on this. And let's start off with, first of all, what accounts they offer. Now, this is going to focus on the free accounts, okay? The ones you do not have to pay for. And all of them, Monzo, Starling and Chase, do offer you this option. You can have free banking, no charge at all for accessing it and all the normal banking things you want to do. Now, Monzo does have some paid accounts. It's worth knowing about this just in case you are interested in these extra features. I have got extra videos for when these were released. £5 for Pro, £15 a month for Premium. I don't think they're worth it for what you get for that money. But again, if you are firmly in the Monzo camp, you might want to look at them. Again, I possibly wouldn't really recommend it. Starling and Chase, there are no paid accounts. You can get joint accounts with both Monzo and Starling, but you can't with Chase. This is an important one if you are keen to have your own personal account and a joint account in that same app ecosystem, because it is quite easy then to work within that kind of relationship rather than transferring it to a different bank, which again is no real problem. You can do it, but it's so much easier if you're doing it within a single app. So that might be an important one for you. Focus on Monzo and Starling over Chase. Again, if you have a business like I do, you might also be keen to know that Monzo and Starling have business accounts. I've got the Starling one, but I could very easily, when I applied, gone for the Monzo one. I just went for Starling. They both do free bank business banking, which again is a big plus when you look at the charges out there from other banks. Again, if that's important to you, then you might want to choose Monzo or Starling over Chase to again also have a business bank account. Children bank accounts as well, teen ones available with both Monzo and Starling. 16, 17-year-olds can get one of this one, which is quite good, has most of the functionality. It's pretty decent, but if you're looking for one for just for children, that you can control effectively through your app, then Starling is the only one. You'd have to pay for that though. It's £2 a month for this Kite card. And there might be better child management banking apps out there like Hyperjar that you might want to consider instead. But if you do want to keep it all within that same sort of app ecosystem, then Starling would give you the edge. And Starling also is the only one that has a currency account in euros. Again, most of us, that's not going to be important too. There is a fee for this one as well. But if you do regularly receive and spend in euros, then again, that might be a reason for you to plump for Starling over the others. So quite a quick one there. Really, there's, most people will be happy with any of them, but joint kids business, then maybe you're leaning towards Monzo and Starling over Chase. Next up, opening the account. And this is actually really, really important. A lot of the feedback I've had from viewers about the Chase account is they can't get it. And that's if you look at this here, the minimum iOS on an Apple phone, 14.1, compared to Monzo and Starling, which require 10 or 10.3. Android, again, Chase requires Android version 8, but it's only 5 for Monzo or Starling. So this, again, could be a real issue for you if you are keen to get Chase, but your phone is older and doesn't support the newer iOS and newer Android, then you can't get it. There's tough luck. You have to buy a new phone, effectively, and they're not going to downgrade that. If anything, what you'll see over time is those probably for Monzo and Starling as well, as they make more improvements, as those older iOSs become obsolete, they'll increase that as well. But theoretically, if that's happened to you, you may be looking at a new phone anyway. But that's really, really key one here. You might not be able to get Chase, but hopefully you will be able to get Monzo or Starling. Small other one here about opening an account. There are no bank switching deals here. There's no big money available, but Monzo does have a £5 refer a friend scheme, which it relaunched quite recently. I used up all my referrals. I can't share that with you anymore, but if you know someone who has an account and you haven't got one, ask them for their code. You'll both get a £5 for joining. So that's no bad thing. Probably not enough of a reason to choose it over the others, but if you're going to want to get it, why not? Starling also has a refer a friend scheme where they will plant a tree. So you don't make any money, but you're doing a little bit of good. So a quick one there, but it's important to know the difference between the three banks there. Right, next up, let's look at card features and controls. Again, lots of banks are copying this kind of stuff now and doing similar things, but these ones are all really, really strong. What I really like about it is that you do not need to have your card on you to make a payment with, well, probably with just two of them as it happens. The Starling and Chase cards, the apps, you go into them, you can see your long card number, you can see the 3 digits, you can see the expiry date, and you can copy them and then paste them straight into your online banking if you want to, or just read them out of the phone depending on what you're buying, which is fantastic. You can also see your PIN. So if you've forgotten it for whatever reason, you can go into the app very quickly and look at that, and then you can make those payments if you're out and about if you need to. Monzo does let you see the long card number, but it doesn't let you see the 3 digits, which kind of makes it, I think, slightly counterproductive. What's the point of that if you can't use that? You need those extra features to make a payment. If you can't see it, you can't make a payment. And in fact, to see a PIN, you need to have your card on you because you need those 3 digits on the back of the card. Now, of course, you might remember those, in which case it's fine. You can tap those in and it will remind you of your PIN. But if you don't have your card on you, the only other option is to take a photo of your ID and record a voice message. So that takes away some of that sort of flexibility and ease that you do get with Starling and Chase. So absolutely, I put Monzo at the bottom of the pile for this one. The other two are much better. Starling probably has the edge over Chase because it has a wider range of those restrictions. Yes, you can freeze your card with all of them. Yes, you can block gambling transactions with all of them. But Starling also gives you the ability to block, if you want to, chip and pin, online, mobile wallet, just the swiping, the mag strip for swiping, using it abroad in addition. So you've got more controls there. You probably won't need them, but it does have those. It also, unlike the others, has slightly more flexibility for the digital, how you use it online. So not just Google Pay and Apple Pay, but also Samsung Pay, Fitbit Pay and Garmin Pay. Again, won't be relevant to everyone, but it's worth knowing that Starling has those extra features. Starling also has something called a connected card, which again, I'm not sure we're all going to use it. And that is one of the problems with all these extra features. You don't always need them. But this is quite a nice little one where you can basically get an extra card linked to your account that someone can go out and spend on your behalf with. But they only have access to a separate pot that you've set up and put the money into it. And the max they can spend on that is £200. So again, it was useful during the pandemic, for example, maybe if you wanted someone you were isolating and you couldn't go out. Use it after that, maybe not so much, but maybe some people who have carers or whatever who could take advantage of that. Again, Starling gets the nod there. There is something interesting with Chase that's worth noting. I'll show you the card again here. Here's the front of it. And you're used to now, so there's nothing on the front. It's got my name, but that's it. If I turn it over, all it's got on the back are the phone numbers to call if something's gone wrong. It is a numberless card completely. Now, there are pros and cons on this. Obviously, it's great for security. So if your details are compromised, you can just generate a new one instantly online. You don't even have to get a new physical card. Okay, fantastic. Lost it online, but new one digitally generated. Obviously, if you lose the card itself, then you can just freeze it anyway and order a new one, as you can with all the different apps. But it is also slightly frustrating. So when I'm using this card right now, if I do need to type the details in or give them to someone, I need to make sure I have the app with me in order to bring up those details and quickly see them or copy them over. Now, I have checked this as well. It works without any mobile signal and without Wi-Fi. So that's a kind of obviously thought about that there. But again, it is a little bit frustrating, but also quite good, but puts firmly in second place on this section. Quickly want to say here about replacements as well. If you do lose your card, you can get them once a year with Starling if replacement. Obviously, it's slightly different if you're a victim of fraud, then they'll replace them or if it's expired. But if you keep losing them, if you're likely to lose your cards, then you have to pay after one. Monzo will charge you unless you do a couple of things which give you a few extra privileges. So you have to pay in money every month or have 2 direct debits. So it's an easy enough one to do, and it will be replaced by Chase. Should I say to you on contactless as well? Important one here is Monzo and Starling do let you reduce how much you want on contactless. So if you don't want a 400 quid, you can lower that down. Chase just lets you turn it on or off. So again, Monzo and Starling better than Chase when it comes to that. Right, let's look at spending now. And these banks are all great options for your spending. mainly because they are free to use overseas. Okay, so unlike your NatWest or your Barclays or your Halifax or whoever it might be who will charge you, these ones will not charge you at all for your spending. We'll come to cash withdrawals a bit later on. You'll also get instant notifications at home and abroad when you spend, and instant. They're there straight away, so you can check what you spent, which is a great tool. Yes, more banks are doing this, but not all of them are instant, and even so, these ones all do it really, really well. They also have the ability for you to effectively pay your direct debits from ring-fenced accounts. You'll know about this already. You'll know about pots for Monzo, spaces for Starling, and basically additional accounts you can get with Chase. You can have direct debits coming out of all of those. So you can use them for paying your bills and your regular payments and your standing orders, which is really, really handy feature for budgeting. They all do that relatively the same way. You can't do it for subscriptions though, because you need the long card number for that. Technically, you possibly could do that with Chase, but I think it'll be harder than you would, because with Chase, you can actually change the account that you pay from before making a payment with a card before making a payment, which is a nice little feature for budgeting. But it'd be very, very difficult to do that before your payment for Netflix or Spotify came out. Okay, so it's not really focused too much on that. There are some differences though, and I think where Chase then really kind of comes to the forefront of these three cards is because it does something that none of the other two do. In fact, no other current account does. It will give you cash back on your spending. The vast majority of your spending, there are some exceptions, but you get 1% back, and that is fantastic. That's better than the vast majority of cashback credit cards even. So this is possibly the best way to pay right now. Plus you get that benefit of using your current account. If you're not confident with budgeting with a credit card, it comes straight out. So that is a kind of a clear winner. It is only for 12 months though. So when that 12 months is up, is it going to be the best way to spend? No, it won't, because then it will be back to a cashback credit card. But for now, this is a really, really good feature. And as I mentioned before, I do quite like the idea that you can spend from a different current account within your main account before you make a purchase with that debit card. However, you know, Chase, which is that card you can link things to, lets you change things after spending. And that's a kind of a much more useful version of that, which unfortunately you can't combine the two. Monzo, Starling, again, realistically, they're just the same after that. Monzo does have a feature that, say you're in a house share and there's quite a few of you and you're all on Monzo, you can have like shared tabs, which are quite good potentially. But again, it's a gimmicky thing most people aren't going to use. Likewise, you can split the bill with Monzo and Starling, which again is quite good. You don't have to be on Starling or Monzo. You can literally just send a little form over with how much it is, and all they have to do is enter in their debit card details. Sadly, not credit cards. I was hoping there might be a little fix there to get cashback credit card on those, but but that again is a nice little feature which Chase doesn't offer right now. Of course, Chase is still new, so it might be changing and adding things on as we go along. Well, let's talk about transfers now, because this is something that is really, really important to me with any digital banking app, and why I like Starling and Monzo and Chase over many of the other banks. Yes, a lot of the other banks do now make it easy for you to add a new payee or a new direct debit or a new standing order to your account and to authorize it and transfer them through, but some of them do still require a card reader or to log on to online banking. Because these banks, Monzo, Starling and Chase, have been designed just to be used on an app, you do everything in the app. So it's really, really, really simple to do all those transfers and move your money around, which is fantastic. There are, however, some limits, which might be, again, important to you in terms of which one you would go for. The winner here, obviously, if you look at the figures we've got right now, is Starling. £250,000 daily or single limit. Now, there might be a bit of time where they want to check this. I've had this in the past where I've had to kind of fill in a few little extra pieces just to sort of confirm I'm not being scammed and let them know that I do want to transfer this amount of money over. Obviously, not 250 grand. That would be amazing. But large sums of money anyway. I'm sure it would be similar with Chase and Monzo anyway, just because they're trying to hopefully do their best to protect you from fraud. The next one from that, obviously, Chase, slightly high limits. Let's put that on second place here. Monzo, 10 grand. I mean, how often do you spend more than 10 grand or transfer more than 10 grand in a day? Probably not that often. Monzo does have another feature here, which I'm still putting in third place because I think it's a bit gimmicky. I don't really think it's that useful, but it does have a thing called early payday. Effectively 4 p.m. the day before you are due, your pay is due to reach your Monzo account. As long as you're paid by something called backs rather than something called faster payments, you can get that money early. Now, it's nice, maybe, if you want your money a little bit early, but if you're that desperate for your money to come in a day earlier, and that's a common thing that happens with you, all this is going to do is just bring that problem forward a day, because next month you still would have spent your salary in time. So again, I don't really think that's something to shout about, but maybe it's something you might want to be aware of. Now, one of the big things that Monzo and Starling did when they launched, which really shook things up, which so many other banks have tried to emulate, along with all the other things they've tried to copy, was that ability to set budgets and to track your spending. Now, none of them actually, I mean, Chase does it as well now, like many other banks do. They're all perfectly competent, but they're relatively limited. If you really want to get the full feature from this, then you want to look at some dedicated budgeting and money management apps. I did a whole video, a very detailed video like this one, going into those ones, how they work and the best ones. So make sure you do watch that one if you're interested in that. But if you just want a kind of a light touch thing where you can see your spending by categories, so groceries and travel and things like that, then they will do the job. You can't change those categories. They are kind of just prescribed ones, but it gives you a kind of a, because like you say, an overview of where your money is going in terms of analysation. What I think puts Monzo and Chase above Starling, and probably Monzo top of the list here in this category, is that you can set a budget with Monzo for your whole account, and you pop up the screen and you can put the different categories, how much you want to be spending each month on it. And very quickly, there's a little pie chart at the top of the app. You open it up and you can see how you're doing in that month compared to the budget you have set from your main account. Chase has budgets you can set for the little micro accounts, those sub accounts you set up, which is useful if you are using it in that way for budgeting, if you are literally splitting your money out when it comes in into those separate accounts and see how you're doing, but it doesn't give you that kind of one page sort of oversight. Starling surprisingly does not have a budget feature. At least I couldn't find it. And I just said, I spent a whole day going through my apps, going through the help features to find this. So I don't think that's on there. I'm sure it used to be, but it doesn't seem to be there right now. So that was probably at the bottom of the pile. Just in terms of then actually looking at your spending, you do what you imagine you would be able to do with a banking app. You can search your transactions. And because these are just on a bank, you can go back as far as you possibly want. Since you open the account, there's no restrictions, which you sometimes get with other banks, which only go back for 6 months or 3 years or whatever it might be. This goes back all the time. And you can download statements. Now, an interesting thing here is Chase only has a PDF output. So if you do need to upload your statement into a spreadsheet, Excel, Google Sheets, whatever it might be, or some accounting software, then you won't be able, then Chase is no good for you there. And one annoying little thing for me, it's something that I spoke about in that when I looked at all the budgeting apps last year. You can't filter in and out when you're searching transactions. I quite like to be, look, can I just see the money that's come in? Can I just see the money that's gone out? Yes, they have separate tabs for spending and for transactions, but it doesn't quite work in the same way. So I find that a little bit frustrating. Right, let's look at savings now, because this is a big thing which these banks do really, really well, but in a couple of kind of contrasting ways. The big way of doing this is to have these separate, again, we talked about them before, pots and spaces and extra accounts where you can put your money aside. So it is not in your main account, which again makes it very easy to avoid accidentally spending it and very easy for you to track your progress. Now, I generally say to people that these are all well and good, but you should be going for the best interest rate or a decent interest rate in a different account. So it can still be in a separate account. You can still do this. I guess what you miss is not having them in a single dashboard. Although, again, talking about those money management apps, you sometimes can bring that in together and see them that way. But again, it's a nice way, particularly if you do struggle, you can see things like that. I do really, really like that. Talking about interest, and this is probably where Chase is leading the pack and probably why a lot of people have suddenly got interest in it, is because Chase is currently offering 1.5% interest on up to £250,000. You can have 10 micro accounts in Chase, combined 250 grand, all earning 1.5%, which is better than you can get anywhere else right now. A few places are keep catching up, slowly get 1.2, and by the time you watch this in maybe a month's time, maybe there are, or 2 months' time, maybe there are other banks that have gone past 1.5%. But certainly it's getting people interested in Chase, and it is very, very difficult to beat. You also can get 5% interest with Chase on your roundups. You get a nice little auto savings feature, which all three banks offer, where you're spending, say £1.80. And if you've turned this on, 20p will be moved to a separate pot or space or account. Again, add a little bit of extra money on without really thinking about it. But you actually earn 5% on that with Chase, which you don't get with the others. Monzo does have interest rate. You can have a separate account here, 0.65%. But again, that's not very good, so I wouldn't bother with that. Starling gives you 0.05% on all of your money. Very, 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 very low. So I wouldn't get excited about that at all. Where Monzo, I think, is quite exciting, though, compared to Chase and Starling, is something called If This Then That. And I've done a whole video looking at it, so I won't go into a huge amount of detail right now. You can watch that to kind of really get how that works. But effectively, this is linking up Monzo to a service called If This Then That, which then basically uses individual triggers to help you save. So that could be automating savings challenges like the 1p savings challenge. Every day, a penny is moved, or any variation of that. Or it could be when you go into a certain shop and the map on your phone says, oh, look, you are now in this place. And that maybe is a fine. Every time you go into, I don't know, McDonald's, you know you shouldn't do it. So you find yourself putting money into your savings. You can do that with Monzo. I think that's fantastic. If you do struggle with saving, or you just want to make saving a little bit more fun, then Monzo is the only one that does anything like that. It also has a service called the salary sorter. And it doesn't have to be your salary. It can be any amount over £100. When this goes into your accounts, into Monzo, you can say, I want £5 over here, £10 over here, £1,000 over there, into those different sub pots that you have. So it makes it a lot easier and automated for you to put things in different savings goals if you want to. Although, of course, there are third parties that would do that as well. Okay, let's look at cash and checks right now. I'll be relatively quick on this because I know most people don't use cash and don't use checks anymore. But there is a difference here if you do. And Starling is absolutely the winner here because there are no branches with these banks, but you can pay money in and withdraw it from, if you need to, from post offices. And there are far, far, far more of them than the PayPoint locations which Monzo offers. Chase, you can't pay in cash or checks at all. And actually, if you do have a check, again, I know it's very, very rare, but Starling will let you take a photo of it on the phone and upload it that way. So again, it's much, much better for that. And incidentally, when we're talking about cash deposits with Monzo, you'll get charged £1 every time you do it. Now, there is an easy way around all of these things, these restrictions and limit of locations and stuff is, as I always say, you should have more than one current account anyway. So if you've got a current account at a bank near you, a more traditional bank, which lets you put in large amounts of money or more checks or whatever it might be, just pay it in there and then transfer it digitally. But it's important to know about these things. Equally, there are some restrictions on cash withdrawals with these banks. Again, not with Starling. Starling, you can take money out your ATM as much as you want. There's no issues there compared to your normal banks. Monzo, though, will only give you an allowance of £250 every rolling 30 days in the UK and the European Economic Area. You can get around that, though, if you add money to your account, Monzo account every month, or have a direct debit. So we talked about that earlier on in terms of getting free cards. It's the same kind of a little bit extra. It's easy to get around that. There is a £200 limit every 30 days abroad, though, outside of Europe. So if you're in America, Australia, India, wherever it might be, then that might be a problem. So that's why I generally don't recommend Monzo for overseas use anymore, just because if you do need cash, there is that restriction before you get charged. With Chase, it's a £700 a month limit. Taking your money out. Again, that shouldn't be a problem for most people, but if it is, then Starling obviously leads the way. Now, I'm going to be very quick on borrowing as well, but just to highlight the differences between them, three of them for you. Chase, you can't get an overdraft or any other form of borrowing from them, so let's ignore them. But Monzo and Starling do offer, let's say, competitive overdraft rates, right? In that they're not all 40%, as you'll get with most of the other banks. You might, depending on your credit rating, get 15, 25 or 35 with Starling, and with Monzo it's 19, 29 or 39. Obviously, if you have a large debt and you can get 15 or 19% from Starling or Monzo, then that is better than maybe in 40% elsewhere. But you might also be able to get cheaper borrowing elsewhere or other ways to pay off that overdraft. So again, I wouldn't really encourage you to use your overdraft. And again, if you don't apply for an overdraft when applying, then there's no hard credit check with these accounts as well. So that's a nice extra feature you would get with them over other banks. Monzo has recently launched and made a lot of noise about its Monzo Flex buy now, pay later service. I will look at this in more detail very, very soon, I'm sure you. But again, buy now, pay later, like Klarna, like ClearPay, all these other ones, is not necessarily, and probably is very unlikely to be the best way for you to pay for things. Just because it's there doesn't mean you should use it. Right, this is probably a really important one, actually. And this is about your experience, your user experience. How easy is it to use? What is the support like? Now, they all do what you'd hope they do in terms of there's biometric login. You can use your face or use your thumb to log in. That is fantastic. In terms of getting support, again, there are no branches, but let's face it, who goes to a branch for support anymore? But they have in-depth in-app like live chats. Now, I say live, it might be you put a message in and then someone gets back to you later on. If you don't get a notification, it can take a while for this conversation to go back and forth. But my experience so far, all three of them has been decent enough. I mean, is it ever good from any of these banks? They also all have, and I was surprised about this, I didn't realize that they all have phone support as well. So that is certainly something to consider. It's available. However, you're probably going to have quite a long wait to get through. But then that's probably the case with a lot of the banks right now. So there is the other sort of the next option here in terms of support if you're struggling with things, and that is the online help section. I had a look, obviously, at all of these while I was researching this, just making sure I was right. If I couldn't find something I wanted to tell you about, how could I find it? I thought the Starling one was very good. It was very comprehensive and it had a search option, so I could look for the stuff that I was trying to find. The Monzo one, I was clicking back and forth all the time, and it couldn't search it. And often I had to go into Google and type what I was looking for, and then it brought up the page within the Monzo thing. But the information hopefully is there, so you can find the information, and definitely more comprehensive than you'd get with most of the traditional banks. The Chase one, it was pretty brief. There wasn't a huge amount in there, but that's because, well, they're not doing a huge amount right now. So the answer most of the questions you're going to have, and they're in there. I'm sure as the bank grows, hopefully that will improve as well. You can also, in the banks, do something very important. You can update your personal info, which a lot of the other apps don't let you do this. If you want to change your address or your email address or whatever it might be, your phone number, you can do it in the app. Really nice and simple. There's no need to log on or go into a branch. Obviously, there are no branches. When it comes down to kind of which one is the easiest to use, though, actually just the most user-friendly, it's quite a hard one. I think a lot of it's going to come down to personal choice. So maybe you want to get all three of them and give them a go. Certainly, I think that the more you use it, the easier things are going to be. I noticed, because I haven't used Monzo for a long time, there's been a lot of changes since I last looked at it. I don't know, maybe it was 6 months ago when I last looked at it properly. It took me a while to figure out where things were. I certainly was kind of clicking back and forth quite a lot. It's a weird one, Monzo, where it feels very, almost too basic, yet also too overly complicated. I'm not quite sure what's going on there. Maybe there'll be other iterations that sort that out. But I was disappointed because Monzo used to be what I felt the most simple one out there. That is now Chase. Chase, I found everything I needed. I could do everything I needed with just a few taps, my finger on my thumb. Really, really easy. Of course, it is trying to do a lot less. But if you want a very simple process, then Chase is there. Now, Starling is the bank that I use most of the time, my day-to-day banking. So maybe I've got the hang of it more. But I feel it certainly had cleaned its act up a lot compared to maybe a year ago, where I was trying to find information like how do I copy my current account details and share them with somebody. Now there's one place to do it. Before there was like 2 or 3. It was really simple for me to do it. So I absolutely am a big fan of Chase. Again, it will take some getting used to, and there are a couple of tabs which I think maybe don't need as much. There is another benefit, though, that does come with Starling, is that it has almost full access on a desktop, which, yes, you probably won't want to do it. I've been talking this whole video about why the app is most important, but sometimes, particularly if you're trying to sort of have a look at stuff in a bit more detail, then going onto a desktop, open up a browser and doing it there is going to be great. Chase does not offer this, and Monzo has a very, very, very limited version, which is basically just for emergencies. Say you lost your phone. Now, this last section is quite an important one as well. I've called it company and security, but it's probably a bit bigger than that. It's sometimes something maybe a little bit difficult to kind of really put your finger on, but I'm going to try and do that right here, again, to help you choose between the 3 companies. Now, first of all, is the bank profitable? Chase, yes, it's owned by JP Morgan Chase, one of the biggest banks in the world. Obviously, no bank is too big to fail, but it's big, it's solvent, it's doing well, it's making a lot of money out there. We'll come back to what it's doing with that money in a minute. Starling, yes, it is also profitable, and it looks like it has a good roadmap in terms of its growth. Feel confident that's not going to be going anywhere. Monzo, though, has quite widely reported been struggling over the last few years. It was struggling before the pandemic and then again in the pandemic, to the extent that in its annual report, and I did a whole video looking at this last year, it's kind of warning that, you know, it had enough money to keep it going, but how long would that last? So you do have people worrying about whether you should put your money in Monzo, whether you should use Monzo, because what if they go bust? Well, all 3 of these are protected by something called the Financial Services Compensation Scheme. They are all fully licensed banks in the UK. Unlike Revolut and Monese, which are not, these 3, if any of them were to go bust, you would be protected up to £85,000. Now, I wouldn't recommend you have 85k in any of these banks anyway. It's far too much to have in savings, and spreading it around kind of helps you if there's any sort of risk of any problems. But yeah, you're fine. So again, I wouldn't sort of put you off Monzo on that basis. Definitely keep an eye on things and definitely have money available in other accounts, but it shouldn't be an issue. You will get your money back. In terms of stability, again, this is something which I put a note in here. You can see here I've said like Monzo 2nd place, Starling and Chase equal 1st place. This is simply because on just before Christmas 2021, and I believe back in May or spring of last year as well, it did have a brief periods of downtime. And I haven't noticed that with Starling or Chase. However, this does happen with many banks. You know, we've seen it with Nationwide this year. We've seen it in the past with TSB and Santander. And, you know, this is a thing that does happen with digital banking. just be aware of it. It happened a couple of times, but I wouldn't necessarily say that Monzo is less stable than Starling or Chase, but it's worth just flagging that for you. Something which you also might have heard a lot about is Monzo freezing accounts. Okay, and this again be widely publicized. Again, Monzo, Revolut, and Monese particularly getting a lot of the press on this, where all of a sudden your account is closed, it's frozen, you can't access the money in it. And the reason for this is because they've seen signs which they see with an algorithm, and they say, a manual person as well has had a look at it as well, that signs of fraud going on. Now, there have been a larger number of cases with this, and in fact, it is being investigated. Have they done this too much? Are they being too hot to try and stop fraud? But it also happens with Starling, and I wouldn't be surprised if it does happen with Chase. We just haven't heard of it because it hasn't got as many customers and it is newer, and it absolutely will be happening with the bigger banks as well. It does seem to, though, focus more or happen more to customers of these digital banks. Possibly because scammers are targeting them, because maybe talked about, the credit, no hard search, but there's still a soft check, but maybe scammers are using them because they find it easier to take advantage of them. Maybe it's because the technology companies, Monzo, Starling, so therefore they've got better ways of detecting fraud, so they're more likely to spot things. But it does happen to everyone anywhere. So again, I wouldn't put me off any of these banks because of this, and it wouldn't put me off all of these banks because of this. But again, reiterate what I said before about that profitability, if they were to go under or whatever it might be, spread your money around more than one account. It makes perfect sense. And you can take advantage of the interest rates, the perks, the overdrafts, the switching bonuses, all those things available on other accounts, and have your money in them. So if something does go wrong, if your account was frozen, and it could happen at any bank you've got, not just these ones, then you don't have to worry too much. But again, it's not a great thing, but it's absolutely worth talking about. And the last point I want to make here is around ethics of the company, because this is really, really important. And this is why, as much as I've been raving about Chase since it launched for that 1% cashback, as much as I've been raving about Chase for the 1.5% interest rates, because they are market leading, you can't beat them. It gets a very, very, very low score on Ethical Consumer Magazine sort of investigations. 3 out of 20, because Chase is owned by JP Morgan Chase, a massive bank, as I said. Your money, if you save it with Chase, they will then be using that money to invest in fossil fuels or to fund regimes potentially where there are human rights violations. Okay, this is why it's got such a low score. Now, it's not going to be very different to your Halifax or your HSBC or your Santander or your NatWest or all these other big banks. Okay, they will be doing similar things with your money. But it's certainly something to consider. Do you want to have this as your main account? Do you want to be using it all the time if that is what your money is happening to your money? Monzo and Starling, they get this rating of 12 out of 20 there. More, I would say here, out of them not doing bad things because they don't have the ability to do the bad things than necessarily a desire to completely avoid that. Though Starling definitely talks a better talk than Monzo when it comes to this. But if you're interested in the ethical side of things, then absolutely I would sort of not look at Chase. I would look at Starling or Monzo. So which one should you go for? Well, hopefully you can make your mind up from all of those. As I said, there is a whole article on the blog which goes into more detail of this, and you can examine those little tables I've got in far more detail. And I will link to that below so you can click through. But here's a little summary. If I ranked in that category, the best account, I gave it 1 point. If it was second, it got 2 points. If it was third, it got 3 points. So you're looking for the lowest possible score here. And as you can see, the lowest score out of those 3 categories was Starling, 17 points. Then followed by Chase and then Monzo. Now, not all those categories are equal, are they though? And certain things might be more important to you. So, I don't know, let's say you have a recent phone. Well, then it doesn't matter that Chase only needs iOS 14 because you can get it, right? It doesn't matter. So therefore its higher score there is irrelevant. So that would even things out a little bit. You never use a check or pay in cash. Well, then those advantages with Starling, they're irrelevant as well. So you don't need that. So it's a useful little guide here, but fundamentally I think you need to have a kind of look yourself, work out which ones work best for you. From my point of view, I'm going to go with a 2-pronged approach here. I'm going to say you want 2 of these accounts. I'm going to say you want Chase for your spending, maybe for your savings, if you're happy with that ethical side of things. But that is a good for those things, okay? But I would then go with Starling for my day-to-day banking. All those little extras that make that slightly easier to use than Monzo, slightly more stable as a business than Monzo, maybe a slightly better ethic in terms of its direction, where it's going, and more stability there than Monzo. That would be my pick over that. But I would love to know what you think. Do you have any of these banks? Do you have all three? How do you rate them 1 to 3? Let me know in the comments below. And if you do want to watch my reviews of these other banks, then check out these videos here. My name is Andy Webb. Thank you so much for watching.